Hello, friends. My name is Michael Levine, and we are starting our 10th season. 10 years. I can't believe it. Our 10th season of Without Notes. First of all, I love the title because I think it very aptly describes the journey we're about to go on, the expedition. My partner for the expedition, I'm delighted to say, is someone I've wanted for some time to be on the show. A gentleman by the name of Andy Parker, who has a unbelievably powerful, true story to share with us, and then subsequently, what was learned, what then became, what did this story bring forward in an individual? A normal American male, an average American male, but he's not average in any way that I know of. So anyway, with that, please welcome to Without Notes, Andy Parker.
Michael, thanks for having me. It's an honor, and I didn't realize it's been 10 years since you've been doing this. You were way ahead of the curve on this kind of format.
Well, indeed we were, and I am honored by your presence, but I'm also honored by the vast audience in very unusual parts of the world. I mean, every time I get a note from Australia or Bulgaria or Nairobi, it's all so interesting to me. Anyway, be that as it may, Andy, I think the best way to begin the journey. I want to first start some preliminary questions about you, but then I want to quickly get to your story because it is riveting and it is heartbreaking and it is an American story. Whether we want to face the inconvenient truth or not, and there are many who don't, this is real. So let's start with you. Where were you born, Andy?
I was born in Austin, Texas. Austin, Texas. I
Okay.
grew up always wanting to be, the University of Texas was there. I knew I was going to go to the University of Texas. I bled orange, burnt orange. And the interesting thing about Austin, everybody knows Austin now, back in 1975 when I graduated from the University of Texas,
Austin.
there were 200,000 people in Greater Austin.
That's
Now it's like
what is the
two and a half
population
million,
today?
over 2.5 million now and growing.
And so hot and intriguing. Everyone wants to be there. It's, of
Yeah.
course, the home of our old pal Joe Rogan. He's there and all that. Okay. After college, what became of you?
Well, I have to go back because during college, my goal was to, at that point, my junior year, I was going to be a lawyer. Just what everyone needs is another attorney.
Yes, we
And
don't have enough in America, it
no,
seems to
not
me.
nearly enough.
Yeah,
And
if we
so,
can only get a few more.
yeah, and my parents were like, "No, you got to be a professional. You can't be a musician. You can't do." But I was a singing waiter at a dinner theater in Austin while I was going to school,
Right.
and I had so much fun. It was called the Country Dinner Playhouse. It was on the Start. They had people like Ann Miller and Mickey Rooney and Don Amici that would come in and headline these productions. It was a professional theater. And we would get up before the show started and do like a 15-minute kind of like John Denver up with people happy, We had a
Right.
great time. And periodically I would, they would need somebody that, they would travel with a cast, but then, there would be small roles that they just said, well, we're just going to, we can't afford to travel, bring that person along. So the stage manager would say, well, we need the role of, the husband, the wife's boyfriend or whatever, some Vito or whatever it was, and I'd say, well, yeah, I'll do that.
We'll
So
do
I
it.
would, yeah, I'll do it. So I started, doing extra work. Well, people loved it. I mean, they'd see you on stage before the show, they'd see you, and they would just throw money at you, and it was, it was too much fun, and so. Make the story shorter, a long story short, I decided I'm having too much fun. I'm enjoying doing this. I guess I was good at it, good enough at it that I got an equity card performing at Dallas Summer Musicals because I wanted to get out of Austin because it was such a, at that point, it was like, no, I want to go to the big town. So I was up there for a couple of years and did some equity shows and then moved to New York. And from there, I I was fortunate enough to get cast in the reopening of Radio City Music Hall in '79, and then from there I went to the first national tour of the Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, and then they called me into the Broadway company. So that's uh, that's what took me from
Wait,
Austin.
that's a great serendipitous story. So, and of course, I am born and raised in New York. So, all these streets you're talking about, I know exactly where they are. I've walked them and so forth. And we had the pleasure of meeting in New York. We went to the old legendary Pete's Tavern, so
Yep.
that was fun. Now, how did you meet your wife?
Well, she was Barbara was running prop. She was getting her master's in I think in theater,
Mhm.
and so she went to work for the Playhouse just running props, and so that's how we met.
So,
Yeah, the
brought
theater brings us
on,
together. Yeah,
as Bob Dylan so poetically says, brought on by a simple twist of fate.
correct.
So, you got married in what year, dear friend?
In '81, we
1981, married.
1981. The whorehouse tour had closed, the national tour had closed, and I was on my way back to Dallas, and um, the stage manager in New York called and said, "Parker, you need to get your ass up here and get in the show." And I said, "Well, Paul, I'm getting married in a week." He said, "I don't care. You got to come up here and get in." So I flew
That
back
was
up to New
certainly
York.
the culture of that time. The
It was,
people, I don't care. Get the hell out.
yeah.
Who gives it?
It's like, I mean, you can't wait. You gotta,
No,
you've
we
got
can't.
understudy.
Right.
I mean, you got swings. So
It's
put
such
them
it's
on.
such a it's such a different culture today.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you marry in 81. When do you have children?
We waited because we were having a lot of fun then, but our first child, Drew, was born in '87.
Uh-huh.
And then Allison was born in '91.
So Drew, 87, Allison, 1991. Now, Allison, the second child, the daughter, and she became interested in journalism and became an anchor. You take the story from there.
Well, everything she touched or everything she tried to do, she did extremely well. And as a former professional actor slash, I wasn't a great dancer, but I could spot talent.
Sure.
She could have been on Broadway. She had more talent than I ever thought about. But she took on a band trip. They went to Atlanta and they toured the CNN studios. And when she was in high school, that's when she said, "That's it. That's what I want to
Okay.
do."
That's it.
And so
In
she
high
got
school.
in high school. She knew what she was going to do. Hell, I didn't know.
Some, yeah, yeah. No,
Had no
most
idea
people
what I was
don't
going to
know.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah. But she
So,
did, and she was very focused, and in fact, graduated a semester early, could have graduated a year early, but she had a job before she got her diploma. And her first job was, yeah, her first
wow.
job was, the funny story, I was I'd gotten out of the business, at a show business, and I was an executive recruiter.
Right.
And so she was looking, she had a reel together. She interned at WDBJ in Roanoke, and they actually put her on camera because she was, she was good. And so she had a reel and she sent it out, and to different stations, and we wanted to make sure that she was either relatively close to home.
Yeah, sure.
And the second reel that she sent out was to this station in Greenville, South Carolina, Greenville, North Carolina. And the news director called her, and he said, he interviewed her, and like 2 days later, he offered her a job. And she said, "Dad, what do I do?" I said, "Do you want it?" She said, "Well, yeah, but," I said, "just tell him yes."
Yeah,
And we got, once she was there, she, because she was the news editor at the student newspaper at James Madison, and she loved it. And she said, "Dan, I really want to be I want to be a news director because that's where they make the money." And I said, "Allison, you can do that one day, but look in the mirror. You've got to utilize your assets." To your point, she was beautiful. I mean, she was beautiful and
good
smart, and
point.
she was beautiful on the inside as well.
Yeah, I did. I obviously didn't know her, but she was a gorgeous girl. Okay, so she gets her job where? Where's the first job?
At WCTI in New Bern, North Carolina, and it was a top 50. I think it was in the top 50 markets, so it was not a
Great. And
small
off she
market.
goes, and she's on air.
She's
And
on
how
air.
old is she? How old is she when she gets her first job?
She was 22. She was
22
22.
years old, first
Yeah.
job, gorgeous girl, moving away from home. Off she goes. And then what happens in the
And
stories?
they give her, they realized they were going to split time with her in the Greenville market. And then they
Right.
realized how good she was, and they said, "Look, how would you like to have your own bureau in Jacksonville?" And she said, "Well,
Oh,
sure." She had her own cameraman.
yeah.
So, and then she started doing fill-in anchor work, and which is what she wanted to do. She wanted to be an
Yeah.
anchor, and she did a lot of fill-in
Yep.
stuff for them. Uh, but when the opportunity came up for an anchor job, she didn't get it. And I can't remember the circumstances, but that's when WDBJ in Roanoke called her and said, "Look, we need someone for a morning reporter." So, basically it's like, the morning show where
Yeah.
she
Yeah, I
go
know.
out
I
and
know.
find stories, and yeah.
Every
So,
every market in America has a morning show. Okay,
yeah.
so she goes off there. And
And
what
she was
year is that?
Yeah, that was in '84. I'm sorry, in
90,
2014. 2014.
2014. Right.
So
Okay,
she'd
so
been with,
2000, yeah, 14, she's an anchor. She becomes an
well, she
anchor.
didn't, she wasn't anchoring, but she was doing the
Oh, the
morning,
morning program.
right. But then she would do fill-in anchoring for at noon and in the evening sometimes. She would do that as well. And so that's where she was.
Yeah. And this is all happening at the bright age of 23 years old.
Yep.
Oh man. And listen,
Yeah.
by uh, you and I know how this industry works, and let me explain it to our viewers. If you're doing that at 23, let's just say you are considered by everyone to be a rocket level stock.
Yeah.
You are headed, whether you know it or not, in 5 years, maybe seven, to either Los Angeles, Chicago, or New York,
Yep.
and maybe a network. So this young lady is really on a trajectory to
Yeah.
Mars. Okay,
Yep.
so 23, she's working. Now, I want to move quickly. She's doing successfully, doing great. People like her. And I believe she even, if I'm not mistaken, develops a boyfriend, maybe. She gets a
Yeah,
boyfriend.
she and Chris Hurst, who was he was the evening anchor, and they developed a relationship, and they were truly in love. I mean, it was, they moved in together, and in 2015, in August of 2015, and then I mean, they had been dating for about 9 months at that point. When this former disgruntled employee that Allison actually met waited in ambush.
So let's talk about the day. So the day begins in a very routine way. This Allison is the morning reporter. Normal day. She has her own cameraman. She's in love with the new guy she's living
Yeah,
with. This is all going along great.
everything is perfect. She had a
Perfect
wonderful
time. Good relationship with her parents. All good. And apparently this TV station has had a disgruntled employee, someone who they had fired. Is that correct?
They fired him. They had to escort him out the door. And I think, we look back and we're trying to figure out, what the motivation was. Well, Adam, Allison's cameraman, filmed this whole episode just to
Yeah.
for posterity, just to make sure. So he films this, and I mean, this guy had been fired from two other stations before, um, prior to joining WDBJ. And the news director, again, we find out after the fact that the news director at DBJ at that point was having a relationship with this guy. So,
News director was having a relationship with the disgruntled employee that had been
yes,
fired.
well, I think it was going on before he got fired. After he got fired, I think it probably ended. But I think that, from what we can surmise, when he ambushed Allison and Adam, his real target was Adam, and Allison just happened to be there.
So I want to be now, this is a sensitive subject, Andy, but we owe it to our audience. And so she goes to work on a day, and this disgruntled employee, and let's not use his name, let's not give him any dignity. This disgruntled employee shows up at the site of the filming. Now, Allison and the cameraman are filming a morning show segment,
Yeah, yeah,
perfectly benign. And this disgruntled employee shows up with a gun and murders Allison on live television. Is that accurate, Andy?
that's it. Well, he was.
And this scene, this grotesque scene, is watched by people on live television.
Yep.
And allegedly, this disgruntled employee was really more motivated by killing the cameraman, and Allison was just there.
Yeah. I think
That's what our best thinking is.
that's what our best thinking is, that Adam, he had a grudge against Adam.
Did the disgruntled employee know Allison at all?
Yeah. Yeah. He met when she was interning at the station. She did a ride along with him. And,
Okay.
she told her mom, she said, this guy's weird. I mean, he's
Weird
just
guy.
weird,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Weird vibes. Okay.
right. But
But
then
he
he was fired
meets,
and he went away for I mean, he was like out of the picture for 2 years and then suddenly reappeared. That's,
yep.
he was,
And then maybe allegedly the target was Adam,
yeah,
and he killed on live television your beautiful daughter.
yep.
Dear God Almighty. This was an international news story. I remember it well.
Yep.
Dear God Almighty. And of course, the subtext of much of the reporting was another American shooting. Now, this disgruntled employee, best we know, where did this disgruntled employee get this gun?
Well, because he could pass a background check.
Went into a gun store. He had never
Yeah,
been arrested. He bought
never
a
been arrested.
gun. How long before the shooting did he have buy the gun? Do we know?
I don't know. I mean, who
Don't
knows?
know that.
He could have had it for long. But the thing about it is, Michael, there were so many red flags, and now you have red flag laws that may have prevented this. But you're fired and you're escorted out by police, not just once, but three times. 3 times. And somehow, again, because this news director that was having an affair with him, um, he overlooked it. They hired a guy. They didn't do sufficient background checks on him. And I mean, it's unconscionable. I mean, I don't know how you do that.
I think let me see if I understand what my guest Andy is saying. He's saying, ladies and gentlemen, if we have a man or a woman, but a man who is escorted out of work 3 consecutive times by the police, perhaps we should in some way notate that so that this obviously disturbed man cannot purchase a gun in the United States of America, though he's never been arrested.
We don't have that.
Okay. Now, Andy feels that premise to be reasonable. I feel that premise to be reasonable. Now, there may be people watching that don't feel that premise to be reasonable, and they're allowed their opinion. This is still a modestly free nation. And but I want our viewers to know where Andy's coming from, where I'm coming from, and if you differ, and we can learn more. Okay. So, and please, friends, let's consider something maybe. When a young woman is murdered, the victim is not merely the young woman, is it not? It's the family, the father, the mother, the brother, the boyfriend. So in 1 minute, this man shatters the lives of many forever. He doesn't shatter them for an hour or a day or a week or a month, forever.
That's very aptly put. He shattered our lives. He robbed us of someone we all adored and loved and had such a, I mean, you mentioned that she was on a trajectory to do great things, and we had a celebration of life not long. I mean, like 4 days after she was killed, and it's kind of word of mouth. We did, obviously we were in a state of shock, but friends put it together, and there were like 500 people. I mean, we wanted to just kind of low key it because we'd heard that the Westboro Baptist Church was going to make an appearance. I mean, for whatever reason, but because they like to show up for that kind of stuff. But I remember seeing a guy in a suit, and in our town, it's pretty casual, right? Guy comes in a coat and tie, and never met him before, and he introduces himself, and he said, "I'm Steve Kappas. I'm the executive producer for the CBS Evening News." And he said, "I just want you to know that she was going to be with us one day." and she would have been. And she robbed, this guy robbed, he robbed us. I mean, this killer robbed us, and robbed
Mr.
her of her future.
Mr. Parker, I know you're aware of this, but let's inform our audience. CBS News is a very venerated news department, less venerated today than it was years back, but nonetheless.
Right.
And it is the home of another popular TV show that some people have heard of called 60 Minutes. Are you getting the picture here? So, first of all, what becomes of this murderer?
Well, mercifully, he he lit out. I mean, obviously, he took off, and the other thing that we connected the dots too, because he was on his way to Baltimore. He was on his way to Baltimore to kill Andy May, who was also a cameraman. He was working for the Orioles at that point, but he used to be a cameraman at WDBJ, who I think was also involved in filming this guy being escorted out of the building. So
he had this killer had a vendetta against.
He had a vendetta.
Right.
Manifesto. He had a GoPro and filmed it on his GoPro, which he posted on Twitter. Thankfully, at that point, Elon Musk was not in the picture, so Dorsey, who owned Twitter at the time, took it down immediately. But it's still floated around, which is another subject. It floated around on Meta and or Facebook and YouTube.
Hold on one second, Andy. Are you implying to me? I want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly. I think I am, but let's check. Are you indicating to me that this murder, which was filmed, immediately was taken down by Mr. Dorsey at Twitter? Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
And our friends at Facebook and our friends at YouTube continue to put it up. Is that accurate?
That was accurate. I think they pulled it after a while, I mean, and I must tell your audience, and I think if they've seen anything that I've done or any interviews I've done, I've never seen any of it. I've never seen the video that he
God
took.
bless you.
I never saw.
Good.
Yeah, I never saw, the replay. I mean, the actual moment of death, that when Adam was was filming or recording.
Right.
I've never seen that either, and I don't want. I hope I never do. I've come close because you stumble over stuff, and it's like, oh, ugh.
I understand.
But anyway, so a state trooper, Virginia State Police, they had a trooper waiting. They kind of knew where he was going. They had an idea where he was going, and they had a license plate reader. Fortunately, and so they captured the license plate. Trooper Neff, she did one of those, strings of stuff that they can throw across the road where it blows out the tires. She did that, and so she stopped the guy, or she stopped him, and then he shot himself. Well, he didn't die immediately. They took him to a hospital. I mean, obviously he was going to, but I met some folks that, some law enforcement people that were involved in it later on. And they said that they took him to the emergency room. Everybody knew what had happened. And they just said, oh, well, too bad. They weren't going to treat him, which I thought was good for them. So
Facebook, there are audience members listening to this, and they're indignant or confused. How could Facebook, how could YouTube think that this is an acceptable idea to leave on their platform a murder of an innocent person? But of course, the answer may well be, well, we're more interested in money than we are morality. If we
Yeah.
leave the video up, we'll get millions of people to visit it. To hell with the family. To hell with what's right. To hell with morality. We care about clicks and money.
That's what it is. And you know, the thing is, these people are sociopaths. I mean, Zuckerberg is a sociopath. I mean, let's just, there's no two ways about it. This guy is not right. And but again, they care more about, you know, they couch it in terms of, well, this is free speech. Well, that's bullshit. You know, there's a limit to free speech.
Right.
You know, televised murder is not free speech. It's, you know, it's terrorism. It's
right.
It's evil. But that's what they, you know, that's what they don't care, and they won't care. And I know we've got to get to, you know, to the point of this is, you know, Congress has been talking about this for years. I've been at this now for 8 years. I mean, a year after Alison was killed. It's 9 years. That was 9 years ago. I've been at it for 8 years trying to get Congress to do something about it. And they talk a good game.
And do what?
Well, to reform Section 230. So for those that aren't, you know, you throw out Section 230, people go,
you either are a publisher, explain that.
Right. Well, Section 230 essentially gives these platforms total immunity from any liability.
Indemnification
Yes.
from any suing. So they can do pretty much whatever they want.
Anything they want to do.
There is no repercussion.
No.
And when you allow rich, powerful people to do whatever they want with no repercussion, they
will.
Yes, they will. But they tend, as historical examples point, they tend to run wild. They don't, the history of humans saying, that's enough, we shouldn't do that, is not very good. Okay. Now, as we close, Andy, I want to talk to you about your experiences and your feelings around what you would refer to as sane gun laws, and what you stand for and what you don't stand for. As soon as people hear the word gun laws, some people just intuitively feel, oh, Andy wants Americans to have no guns. He wants to take all the guns away from Americans. He wants to repeal the Second Amendment. Andy, are you completely and totally, unconditionally opposed to that?
Well, that's a mouthful.
Well, are you opposed to taking away
I guess,
guns from all Americans?
Right. No, I do not. I've never, and as you say, that I've been tagged with that. Well, Parker and Obama want to come and take our guns away. Well, that's not true.
You have no interest in taking guns away from lawful Americans.
Right now, does everybody need an AR-15, an assault weapon? No, I think they should be banned. When they were banned, before the ban lapsed.
An AR, to explain what that is.
An assault weapon, an assault rifle.
A military assault weapon.
Right.
So what Andy is saying is, while he has no problem at all with a legal American owning a gun, a pistol, he has concerns and even opposition to an American owning a military style weapon, and he has even more opposition to an American owning many, 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 many military style weapons, which is legal in America today. You can have 20 or 30 military style
Yeah,
weapons. Is that right?
right. Yeah, you can have an armory. I mean, it doesn't. But again, unless you think that, then, and of course their argument is, well, the government could come in, and it's like, no, if the government wanted to come and take your guns away, you'd be outgunned. I don't care if you have, an armory full of
Sure.
AR-15s.
Sure.
So it just doesn't, and how the statistics show that these assault weapons are the weapon of choice for school shootings. So I would ban that. We got to have universal background checks. We have in Virginia, and I worked very hard to help pass these, get these red flag laws passed, that save lives. I mean,
How many states in America? There are 50 states in America. How many states have red flag laws currently?
I want to say there's about 14 or 15. Certainly not enough. There needs to be, it needs to be federal, but unfortunately, again, because of the makeup of Congress and the fact that they're dysfunctional, it's hard to get any kind of federal legislation on this. States like Virginia, where we have worked really hard, we have a ways to go. Banning assault weapons is the next big hurdle that hopefully will happen next year. But if you do that, you put the red flag laws into effect. You have universal background checks. I mean, there has to be, close the Charleston loophole. There are really simple, common sense
Yeah,
gun
that's
laws.
what I'm hearing, Andy, in your speaking, is that you are not radical. You're deeply wounded, but you're not radical. You're a common sense proponent. Let's try to use some common sense. Let's compromise. Let's use some common
Yeah.
sense. And
And
let's make our North Star a relentless effort to spare the lives of others that in America have become just far too common.
that's the thing. The majority of gun owners in this country, they agree with me. You're not going to get, you can't get people 90% of this country to agree that Mother's Day is a good thing, but you can
Well, as
get.
I've told you, 9% of Americans think Elvis is alive. So,
And there you go. But
there you
but
go.
that's the thing. It isn't radical. It is common sense.
People watching this, which I assume will be very touched by this, your courage in speaking about it. If you can take a moment and just look behind Andy's head and see that picture.
It's my angel sitting on my shoulder.
How can people get information about you and your efforts to invoke some common sense or more common sense into our gun laws here in America? How would they go about doing that, dear friend?
Well, the easiest thing, if you see over my left shoulder here, I wrote a book called "For Alison: The Murder of a Young Journalist and a Father's Fight for Gun Safety," and I devote a considerable part of the book. I mean, it's part memoir, it's part, you know, ode to Alison, and it's part, a call to action. And I devote chapters in the books that just lay out the simple solutions that we can, that normal people, thinking people can look at it and go, oh, you know what, that makes sense, instead of some of the absolute stuff.
We're talking not Democrat, Republican.
No,
We're talking about Americans saying, hey, wait a second here. We got a problem. Let's first acknowledge we have a problem. And let's think about some things that Republicans and Democrats can agree on that would be in the betterment of our country and sanity. So they can get that book on Amazon, I guess, for Alison.
Amazon, yep. They can get it on Audible. I did the narration for the
Yeah, I remember
for the
that.
book, but it's yeah. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, and it's I think it can be a tough read in certain places,
Oh yeah,
obviously,
this was a
but
tough. This was a tough show to do, friend. This
yeah.
was no easy. And your courage, your quiet calmness, despite reliving in this conversation the most horrible moment imaginable,
Well,
is you.
yeah.
You're a tough and kind man to do this because I think
Well,
we're.
thank you. And I was when you mentioned 60 Minutes. Um, I appeared on an episode a couple of years ago. As a matter of fact, it's been 3 years ago. But anyway, I mean, Scott Pelley, who did the interview, asked me if I was afraid, or if how do I keep doing this, or I'm paraphrasing here, but my answer was because Allison would expect nothing less. She would expect nothing less of me. Um, that I have to keep going for her. So that's why I do it. And not just for her, but for everybody else who's been harmed and injured in this way.
And I know Scott Pelley, and Scott Pelley asked you a sensitive question. I think that speaks well of Scott's humanity.
He's a great guy. We got to know him in the aftermath of it, but just, you know, I,
I don't know him
I would
well,
say
but he's impressive
he,
broadcaster, and I'm
and,
impressed by the question that he asked. Andy,
and takes a mean man.
we are going to say goodbye to you. We send you our love. We send you our healing thoughts. I never met Alice. I sure as hell wish I had. I did meet Chris. I met
Yeah.
Chris. Uh, he and
Well,
I
you
became a good
you
friend.
you all would have hit it off famously, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, we would have lots to talk about. I'll tell you
No
that.
kidding.
Yeah, no joke.
She would have loved
But
it.
anyway, you have been a great guest on Without Notes, and I hope your experience was half as meaningful to you as it was to our viewers and to myself.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
I don't quite know what to say after that show. I don't know how to put my feelings into words, except that I'm so glad that you were with me to witness an exceptional, authentic, transparent, vulnerable conversation with a man whose life was changed in a second. A horror that is still indescribable. Today's show may have been among the more challenging Without Notes broadcasts as we begin our 10th year, but I think it was meaningful. I do hope some of you will avail yourself of the book for Alison. I have a copy. And I hope you will think about what you heard today. I believe it's worth considering. And not just the conversation about guns, but the conversation about humanity, about how this man continues to walk each day, how his marriage stays intact, what his Allison's brother must feel like, what the fiance Chris must feel like. Friends, these are questions worth considering. I'm Michael Levine with Without Notes. See you on the next episode.